In this episode of the Digital Trailblazer podcast, we're going to talk about the feast and famine cycles in your business and the things that you can do to avoid them. So stay tuned.
If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9-to-5 jobs to building successful 6- and 7-figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Ray Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now let's get to it with today's guest.
Welcome, everybody. With us today is Justine Beauregard. Justine, take a quick minute, introduce yourself to our audience and let them know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thank you so much, Todd. It's great to be here. Really excited to speak to your audience today about feast and famine cycles and all things sales. My background is really, I got into sales by accident. I really needed to pay my bills, and I asked around what's the highest paying job I can get, and everyone's feedback was sales. So I just figured it out as I went. And over the years, learning how to sell in my own style in a way that felt natural to me and started getting better results over time, I learned most people are taught sales the wrong way. And so instead of just doing sales for hire, why don't I teach people how to sell better in a more natural and effective way? And that's sort of how my business has evolved over the years to what it is now.
Yeah, it's funny that was a question you asked, is what can I do that makes the most money? Because I remember at a point in my life where I was a teacher, I was a band teacher, and I entered that profession because I thought it was going to be a stable job that I could stay in for 40 years and then retire and have a comfortable retirement. And it didn't work out that way at all. My job was cut twice from the budget in 3 years. And I was like, okay, well, if I went to school to do what I was passionate about and it sucks this bad, now when I go back to school, I'm going to go back to school for something that makes money. And then I'm just going to enjoy the money that I have, because I didn't have the security. And so that's what I did. I went back to school and I got re-educated and got a much better paying job. It's funny that you had that moment in your life, because I think a lot of people kind of get there. Now, when people dive into entrepreneurship and building a business, what are the expectations you have, especially if you come from having a 9-to-5 job and you expect that you're going to have a steady paycheck coming in week after week. And as you get more training or more experience, or as you move up, your income just linearly goes up with it. And when you have a business, it's not like that at all. And you have these cycles where things are good and then things are bad, and then things are good and then things are really bad. And then it just goes up and down like that. And that's one of the things that mentally is really tough on people. And I think why a lot of people don't survive as business owners. So when we're talking about trying to avoid those things, especially if you're just getting your business off the ground, when you're laying the groundwork for your business, what are some things you can do right from the beginning to help avoid that? I mean, I know it's never going to completely go away, but what can you do to help mitigate that or avoid that from the very beginning?
Yeah, I think you're talking about two different scenarios, actually, because I think people get into these cycles of feast and famine throughout their business. But then there's also when you're first starting, it's a very unique situation because you have no idea in the very beginning what works and what doesn't work yet. You have no data, you have no perspective, you have no experience. So you can't avoid it in the beginning is my short answer. Like, everyone goes through that phase of just figuring it out. And there is no just do this and you'll avoid it kind of solution for the new business owner, because everyone kind of has to go through that. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I actually think we learn the most from failure and from testing and trying different things and seeing what works. And what happens in the very early stages of a business that I really appreciate, and I often say to newer business owners that I coach and work with, is I am so jealous of where you are right now, because this is the best part of business ownership, is that first part where you're so excited and you're running on this energy that almost kind of mitigates the risk of not knowing what you're doing, because when you come into it full force and it's the first time everyone is seeing your offers and you're super energized behind them and you're willing to do whatever it takes to make it work because you're starting at nothing, your risk tolerance is through the roof, the excitement's through the roof, the energy's through the roof. So even though you haven't figured it out, you still have that to kind of level you out. But where it becomes a problem more, or something that people are trying to make assessments and make adjustments and all of those things to kind of tweak and optimize, is when you get into a lot of confirmation bias for what you're doing and the results that it's creating. The reason why our income is up and down is because our sales activity is up and down. We work really hard to get fully booked, and then we're booked and we slow down on the marketing. We slow down on the selling. And then 3 months in, your customers start to graduate from your programs, or they move on to something else, or they turn over naturally because that's how you set it up. But you didn't have the systems in place to kind of keep the marketing going. And you didn't think of shifting to more top of funnel versus like your mid funnel to lower funnel activities. So you're reaching the wrong people at the wrong times. And it's figuring all of that out and coming up with your systems to make sure that it's a steady flow all the time. And I think we just kind of go with the energy of, I need to sell, so then you sell. And then I need to serve, so you serve, instead of just having that sort of steady pace throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, that is exactly right. When you mentioned that, I remember my wife and I having the exact same discussion in our business. When we have those cycles and we're having one of those down weeks or down months or whatever, and we look at our calendar and it's like, oh, the calendar is looking pretty empty. Let's start hustling and get some more book calls. And so we do that and we fill up the calendar. But then when we fill up the calendar, now we're not hustling to get the calls, right? It's like you've only got so many hours in a day to do these activities, and you're either doing one or the other when you're a solopreneur. So you're either filling the calendar, or you are taking the calls, or you're fulfilling your service with your clients. And that's kind of what creates these feast or famine cycles. And so I know for us, part of what helped to mitigate that was hiring people to help us with taking the calls, people to help us with social media management and podcast editing, and taking on all these jobs that were taking up our time that other people could do. And that helped to level things out, helped us to grow, and helped us to have more of a steady income in our business. What would you say if someone is currently in that cycle? Is that really what they need to do, is to start hiring people, or are there other systems and things that they can put in place right now before they start hiring?
Well, there are many systems they can put in place. I think what you did was right for you, right? And a lot of people are looking for this silver bullet solution of, oh, I'll just hire a VA. I'll just hire a podcast manager or something like that. It really takes that strategic vision to know which thing is my actual bottleneck, which thing is actually holding me back from growth. Is it the fact that I'm editing podcasts for 17 hours a week, or is that not really a problem? Or do I have an efficient system for that, or does it need to be more efficient? Like for me, running my podcast, I knew that the way that I was paying other people to edit it and how long it was taking me to record it, I actually didn't need someone editing it. I needed a better process for recording it. So looking at what exactly is the constraint, where is there a problem, and then solving for that problem. And it's not going to look the same for everybody. But what I will say is you do need to have some sort of engine that's running at all times in the background for you when you're not able to run, right? And so for me, that looks like having a really easy go-to content system. I have content that runs, I bulk create it in Canva. It just goes out all the time. I have my assistant post all of those things. So there's always something feeding the engine top of funnel so that people are always consistently kind of flowing in. And then when I have a heavier need for leads that are active and ready to buy, I'll press the gas pedal on something that's a little bit more direct sales, right? And I want them to respond right away. I want them to be a little bit more qualified, a little bit quicker. And so just like knowing where those little adjustments are that you need to make. But I think there needs to be a cold, hard look at where are the actual gaps. I'm not just outsourcing to outsource or trying to fix something and I don't even know if or what is broken about it. You really need the clarity on what it is that you need to pinpoint and solve for in that moment to make it effective.
with the podcast editing, it's interesting that you bring that up. I know for us, like if you look back towards some of our earliest episodes, very early on, it was just me doing the podcast editing. And what we used to do is we used to listen to the whole episode, and it was a lot of content decisions that we had to make about what we wanted to keep in, what we wanted to edit out, and then finding a couple, 2 or 3 clips that we could cut out that were really interesting, that were really impactful, that we could put at the beginning of the episode, kind of as a hook to get people interested to listen to the rest of it. And that whole process would take hours. And, we're producing 2 episodes a week, and it'd take hours every single episode. And so when we started looking for someone to edit our podcast episodes for us, and we tried to have them do the same process, that part about finding the 3 interesting clips to take and put at the front of the episode, most of the time they were not pulling out the right clips, or they're pulling out things that were irrelevant. It just wasn't right. And that's such an important part of the episode. And so what we figured out to do was that, okay, let's just scrap that idea. Let's just, at the very beginning of the episode, let's just record a hook at the beginning and just get right into the episode, a little bit faster. And that's what we had to do in order to be able to make this editing process manageable to where somebody else could do it without us having to get involved and spend hours of our time doing it. So I think sometimes you just have to make those decisions to make things more manageable for you, because in the end, I don't think people really care one way or the other. Our podcast has been growing both ways. And with somebody else editing it, I think is preferable to us, where we don't have to spend hours doing it to get the same result.
Yeah, for sure. Well, here's something that's interesting that you could also do, because now we live in the age of ChatGPT, and I'm a big fan of leveraging tools to make you more effective, right? Like I just said, I bulk create all of my content in Canva, and actually I'm not doing it. My assistant's doing it, but we have that process created, and I created an SOP for her, and she just can go out, she can run the scripts, she can auto-populate those documents, she can download them and get them all scheduled. And it became really easy. So for you, something that you might want to try next, if you're still looking for that same impact and growth, is getting the transcript of the podcast and uploading it to an AI tool and saying, what are the 3 most impactful or like highest likelihood to go viral parts of this episode? If you were to restructure it, how would you do it? And then just give that report, like have that be a framework that you can give to your podcast editor and say, make sure that the clips line up this way, right? Or go into a tool like Opus Clip, have it automatically do that for you, and then take those clips and use those as promotional materials or things like that. So there's so many different ways that you can get to the same outcome with less effort on your part.
Yeah, well, we use Opus Clip. That's what we use for reels and shorts and whatever. I don't know. I don't even look at that stuff. I just see it in my timeline. It's like, oh, I don't even know what goes out. It just goes out now. But yeah, that's interesting. I'll try that, because we use notebook.lm, and I'll create blog posts from that to put on our blog along with the podcast episode. And so I'm sure I could probably ask that thing. And there's probably better AI tools than that. It's inconsistent. Sometimes it'll create a good one. I'll put the exact same prompt in there for a different episode, and I don't know how to get it to be consistent. So maybe there's a better tool to do that. I'm sure there is.
Well, and that's not to like plug ChatGPT for every little thing, but that's the one that I use for a lot of things. And in ChatGPT, you could do 2 things to mitigate that problem. So first thing is you could create a custom GPT with rules that it follows every time to create the same output. So that's a way to standardize it, which is really easy to do. Or I go in the same blockchain way that it does it. So I'll open up the same one. I'll save it as like my podcast editing process, right? And then you open up that chat and you say, okay, write me another one just like this in terms of format, tone, and whatever. Or you can, if it's not giving you the same results, you go back and edit that response and say, write another one in this same format, and then copy paste what it did before that you really liked, so that it's learning to do it again and again. And at a certain point, it will shift over to just doing it that way. But I found the easiest way is to build a custom one with your own rules so that it's replicating it in a very consistent manner.
Yeah, we've got somebody working on that right now in our business with a bunch of our stuff, just training ChatGPT on these different things. And I don't even understand it, but this person does. So they're doing it. Thank you for that idea, because we'll probably have them do that at some point. Now, going back to this feast and famine stuff, I know one of the things that you mentioned was about keeping that top of funnel going and always having that steady influx of leads and traffic. And I think that's so important. So many of the clients that we bring on, they want to dive straight into, okay, how do I do a VSL? How do I do a webinar? How do I just get calls booked on the calendar? And they skip ahead to this conversion event or to the sales script or something else like that. And they've got nothing coming in on the front end. And so many times we have to refocus them and say, hey, you need more traffic. You need to create the content. You need to get on podcasts. You need to run ads. You need to keep that pipeline full, because the webinar is not going to produce its own traffic. The VSL is not going to produce its own traffic. Creating a challenge is not going to produce its own registrants. You need to keep that top of funnel full in order to make the rest of this work. Because a lot of times we'll have people come in and say, hey, I did a webinar and nobody bought, so I don't think this works. Or, I need a better script, or what's a better angle? Can you look at this webinar and tell me what I did wrong? And before I even look at it, because so many times I'll look at the webinar and it's like, okay, well, we can fix this or we can fix that. And I spend an hour or two reviewing the webinar just to find out that they only had 12 people register and 6 attended and then nobody bought. It's like, well, we need to get hundreds of people through there first. Then let's see what the numbers are. And then let's decide if it needs to be fixed. But spending all that time trying to tweak something to get a conversion out of 12 registrants, is not realistic. So keeping that top of funnel full, let's talk about that. What are some things we can do? Because I think that'll solve so many problems in people's businesses. That's probably one of the biggest problems so many people have, is they just don't have enough traffic coming in. What are some things that you would suggest for people that they can do to keep that top of funnel full?
Yeah, well, you need to think about what your ideal buyer is thinking about, right? And so putting content in front of them on a regular basis and getting in front of them is more even important than putting content out there that could speak to them. Because again, a lot of people are shouting into a void. They have their same audience of 100 people and they're like, no one's buying. And it's like, well, how many people did you add to your audience this month? Like 0 people, right? And so we just need to put our face and our likeness out there. We need to put our messaging out there. We need to put our mission out there and enroll people in the vision that we have. People need to know what you're up to care about it and to want it. The buyer cycle is 4 stages in my mind. Usually people say 3, but it's awareness, then it's consideration, then it's decision, and I add nurture to the end of that, which makes it cyclical. And so the awareness stage, people need to know who you are. So you constantly have to be putting yourself in spaces and places where your ideal clients are and saying, hi, I'm here. Have we met yet? What are you doing today? Like, how do we get to know each other more? How do I say something that might resonate with you? And often it is putting yourself in a new audience instead of just speaking to the same audience over and over again. A lot of us are tweaking calls to action and tweaking our follow-up process and tweaking lots of little things for like a 1% adjustment on the same crowd of people versus saying the same thing that we've said to the people who already bought to new people who think like them. And so we need to go into those spaces and places. And a lot of people use ads for this reason, because ads put you in front of lots of people, which is traffic, right? And you're paying for it because you either don't have the patience or the skills or the know-how to put yourself, or the expertise yet to be able to put yourself on a podcast with lots of viewership or in a community with hundreds of thousands of people and be able to stand out. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing too, is, I use the analogy a lot. Like if you're in a forest and you're walking, all of the trees, even though every single one is unique, they're all green. They all look the same. You can't tell where one ends and another one begins. So you're walking through the forest and you're like, I see trees. But in the fall, as trees start to change color, you're like, ooh, that tree is a vibrant red and all the other ones around it look green. We are often missing the vibrant red part of the equation. We're all blending in. We're like, but I'm unique, but I'm my own pine tree. But there's a million pine trees next to you and you can't tell where one stops and another one starts. And so you need to figure out, how do I either get my pine tree like a foot in front of all the other ones so I'm standing out that way, or change the color of my needles so that people start to see, oh, this person is a little bit different. And so it's not just about putting yourself in more spaces and places. Usually visibility isn't even actually the problem. It's the fact that we're shouting the same messaging as 90,000 other people in a super crowded market, and we don't actually have anything unique to say. And nobody's picking up on it and going, ooh, Todd, I need to learn more from you. They're just like, okay, so that's what I do. Great. I've heard that from Sally and Joe and every other person this week. Like, Tell me something unique.
So how do people do it? Because I know people struggle with this. If you're doing something like business coaching or life coaching or fitness coaching or, weight loss, it's so saturated in every niche. And a lot of people may be thinking to themselves, well, I do the same thing as everybody else. How do I stand out when I'm a life coach and the other person's a life coach? We went through the same certification program. How do I stand out if that's where I'm at?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love market saturation because it's proof of demand. So when a market is really booming, it's like, this is where you want to be. This is where all the people are looking for support. And when it comes to really differentiating yourself, I think personally, it's results based. It's not about what you do or how you do it necessarily. It's really about the results that you help people achieve. So not everybody is looking to help people achieve the same result in the same way. So for instance, there are a million sales coaches out there. Some of them teach you their blueprint. Some of them give you their script and their swipe files. Some of them talk about how to position yourself in the marketplace. I have differentiated myself by saying, I'm going to help you find your distinctive edge, help you stand out and have a way to close sales on repeat that really feels like you. Because for me, it's important that when people are selling, they feel natural in the process, that they're not using someone else's blueprint or script. And I'm not saying that that won't work for other people. Sometimes it does. That's why those people are successful too. But my people don't subscribe to, I have to follow exactly what Joe says from start to finish to be able to be successful. I can be myself, but I need frameworks. I need tools. I need a process to follow so that I can be myself, but within parameters that actually work for me. And so I sell frameworks and I sell uniqueness because that is what I stand for. And that's not what other sales coaches are saying. And so, of course, there's going to be another sales coach or probably a handful of them, but the likelihood that they are showing up in the same exact audiences at the same times in the same ways and all of that, it's partly how you position yourself. And it's also a lot of branding. And that goes back again to those top of funnel activities that attract your brand fans and champions and evangelists and people who are going to get out there and be like, no, Justine knows what's going on. And so like often, I feel bad saying this, but it's true. People don't always choose the best option. They choose the one that is available. They choose the one that's in front of them. You need a plumber and you call company A, company B, and company C is the one that picks up and your toilet is leaking right now. You're going to go with company C, even though company A is better because you need that solution or you're looking for it now. And so partially it is standing out. And then the other part of that is like making sure that you're consistent enough in showing up that when someone calls, you answer and you're there in front of them at the moment that they need you. Because a lot of people in this day and age are not willing to wait a day or a week for somebody better to come along. They want the solution today. And especially when you get really good at speaking to ready, qualified buyers.
That point you made about people just want the solution now. We just went through that. It was back in December. We've got a rental unit up in Minnesota that the plumbing froze up. And it was the sewage, the poop going out of the toilet froze up and it backed up into the house. It's all over into the bathroom, into the bathtub. And we had guests in there at the time. We lived down in Florida. And so it was calling every plumber that we could. And the only one that could come out like that day and fix it was astronomically higher price than the other ones. But they could come out that day. So we paid them whatever they wanted. They could have probably asked us double. We would have paid it. But they could fix the problem then, right then, and we needed it fixed then. So yeah, and I think the other thing is that people want to learn from people who they identify with, who are relatable to them. That's the other thing. Because you think about news and all the different talking heads out there, and a lot of them are saying the same things, but people follow the ones that they like. But as someone was saying that, yeah, there's a lot of people out here that are saying the same things. And whenever someone new comes on the scene, or if you're starting a new YouTube channel, or if you want to talk about this, that, or the other thing in politics, go ahead and do it. Because yeah, they may have heard the same thing from me, or they may have heard the same thing from somebody else, but they haven't heard it from you. And they haven't heard your take on it. So, for example, someone may want to learn marketing from someone who is another stay-at-home mom versus someone else may want to learn marketing from someone who came from corporate America and left the high-paying executive position to start their own business. They want to learn business from different people depending on who's most like them and who can help them in their situation. And so, yeah, I think everybody's got their own perspective that they can add to it. Even stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home moms who live in a rural area. I know for us, when we started our business, it was out on an 80-acre farm out in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. We had really crappy DSL internet. If we had a 1-hour video that we had to upload to YouTube, we would start the upload and we'd look at that timer and it was like 9 hours, 16 hours sometimes to upload a video. It was ridiculous. And we have to start it during the day, let it run overnight, and hopefully it was done by morning. And for our first online course, what we had to do in order to upload this, because it was several videos, it was like over 8 hours of content that we had to upload. We recorded all the videos and then we drove into Tulsa to the library to upload everything. It took less than half an hour to upload all that content. It was super fast. It was quicker to drive 45 minutes into Tulsa, upload the videos, and then drive back home. It would have taken weeks to do it from our farm. But that's the struggle that we had to go through trying to build a business out in rural Oklahoma where we had this crappy DSL internet and,
Well, and that's great. That's a great example of leveraging your unique experiences too to the right people. Because when someone's out there just preaching to everybody, hey, listen, you need to create a course and upload it fast and get it out there. And they're like, I'm trying. Believe me, I'm trying. But my upload speeds are 12 hours. And then they hear Todd come on and say, listen, when you live in rural Oklahoma, it's going to take you 12 hours to upload a video. But here's a pro tip. Go to the library and it'll take you 20 minutes. And they're like, yes, Todd, you're speaking my language. This is exactly what was happening to me. And so when you show you get it, you get them, you've been there before. That's what a lot of people value too, is that you walk the walk and you do the thing that they're wanting to do before them so that they know they can trust you when they follow in your footsteps and want to do the same thing versus just speaking to the masses, like upload the videos and get it going within a day. And they're like, this video is not even going to upload within a day. So I can't possibly do 20 of them, it makes it really difficult.
Well, and that's the other thing is that people connect with stories. You can tell all the facts that you want. The facts are going to be the same, but it's the stories that you connect to those that people identify with. And the other thing is, we've said this multiple times, but people make decisions based on emotions. And so you need to be good at invoking those emotions. And the way that you do that is by telling stories. Because when you tell stories, people start to envision themselves in that situation. That can envision it in their heads, that they're actually in that situation that you're telling the story about. And when they do that, they start to feel the emotions of that event actually happening to them. They imagine what it would be like for me to drive into the city to upload a video and then drive back, and you've got 2 small kids with you that you're hauling along and all this stuff. They start to imagine that for themselves and what that would be like. And that invokes emotion, and people make decisions based on the emotion. And so your own stories, being able to tell those and make those relatable to people, that's what's going to help you to stand out, I think.
I think what's a problem with that is not everybody is a natural storyteller and not everyone has that skill. And so when they hear just get really good at telling stories, it's like, well, that's really easy to say, but a lot of people are really bad at telling stories. When you go to a party or something and people are just like, get to the point, man. Like, what are you trying to say here? And so you're sitting there and you're just thinking, some people, and a lot of it is in the delivery, one reason why I'm really good at sales is because of my cadence and my tone, and I lean in and I'm animated when I speak and I get really excited about things and people feel it. Not everybody has those skills naturally, right? And so you have to be able to learn not just what to say, but how to say it and when to shift certain things and how to move your body in certain ways. These are all sales skills and they're subtle, but they make a huge difference. And so for the person who's like, Todd, I'm not a storyteller, I don't know how to tell stories, you can do it in different ways. There's different personas and different methods of evoking emotion in someone else. Like you could ask a question that is an obvious yes. Do you want to achieve X, Y, or Z goal? And people are like, yes, tell me more, right? You don't need to necessarily tell a story. You can get them involved in what you're saying just by asking a very simple question. Or if you might be a very fact-driven person, you can just say the stat that's going to be the most mind-blowing. 88% of companies, I couldn't believe this when I heard it. 88% of companies don't make a sale because they don't have a website. Do you have a website? You might want one. Here's the reasons why, right? It's still very factual, but it's just like it's figuring out what about your style is going to land to evoke those emotions that you're looking to create that connection with your ideal customers with. And so sometimes it's just figuring out different ways of getting to the same outcome. But yeah, not everybody is a storyteller. So I actually have 3 messaging personas that I talk about a lot, which is Pithy Patty. So the one who doesn't like to tell a long-winded story, she just likes to get right to the point, get to the meat of it. And that's the question person. Then you have Factual Frida. She's all about the facts. She loves stat. She's on Statista like 24/7. She's going to ChatGPT, tell me the latest metrics for this, like diving into the data and wants to position it that way. And then you have Storyteller Sally, who's like the life of the party, probably the center of the room all the time. She's super animated and she is very long-winded. So she's got those long posts that are just like, and let me tell you this big thing that happened to me and going on and on. And if you couldn't tell, I'm Storyteller Sally.
One of the things that will really kill a sales presentation, whether it's on a webinar or whatever, is when people get to that story part about why should you listen to me? Why am I credible? Who am I? And it's really important, but you can't make it take too long. You've got to be quick and concise with it, and you got to make every piece of what you're saying relevant. Sometimes I'll see people get into this part about, okay, now you're probably wondering who am I and why you should listen to me. Well, I was born on a cold winter night.
I sometimes joke when people ask for my bio. I'm like, okay, so I was born, and then I'm like, just kidding. I'm going to get to the meat of it.
Yeah, it's like you're starting with way too early with facts that are not relevant. Like you said, it's not easy. Some people are natural, but for most people, you got to learn how to do it.
Even the natural ones need to learn that there's different ways and applications of saying the same thing, right? How I write a post is not how I record a reel. They're 2 very different skill sets. It's the same story, but you have to learn how to tell it for the medium that you're telling it in. And that partially is practice. And it's also feedback. Having someone look at your stuff and go, that's not captivating me. And sometimes it's not even a person. It's posting the bad content and seeing the metrics not show you what you want to see. So when the algorithm, which by the way is with humans, you're posting something and it gets 2 likes, that's feedback that's going, that video sucked. Like it just didn't land. And that's okay. But don't keep producing the same style videos because they're not going to work. You've got to try something different.
Yeah, that's a really good point about the different mediums, because you're right. The way that you would produce a video on TikTok is totally different from the way that you would do it on a podcast or on YouTube, which is longer form content. So the top of funnel is obviously very important. But I think what a lot of people miss after that, like you said, a lot of people are probably generating leads, but they're not getting in front of them enough after that. That whole nurture process is really important, because we've said it again in this podcast that there's a trust deficit in this industry. People just don't trust the people who are trying to sell them on their programs and digital products and coaching and all that stuff. And part of that is in building that trust is just getting in front of people more often. And so many times we expect to get in front of people once and then generate a sale. People expect to jump on a podcast or run an ad or create a piece of content, and that someone is going to come along, they're going to watch that one piece of content, and then they're going to be ready to buy. And it just doesn't work that way. So once we generate the lead, we need to start nurturing them. What do you suggest people do for that? Like, how do you keep in front of people and start moving them closer to a sale?
Yeah, well, what's important about what you said is the word they're trying to sell. And I think a lot of people take the approach of, how can I share this piece of content so that someone buys, versus how do I share this piece of content so that someone gets a win, has an epiphany, changes their perspective or their belief system, and then that builds the trust that makes them want to buy all on their own. Like, I don't try to sell anything. I be of service all the time, and people are helped. Like, a woman the other day bought my program straight off of Instagram. No sales call, no endless list of questions back and forth. And what she said to me was, the first video I saw when I got to your profile was this video that I did a little while ago that said, stop sending follow-up emails that say, hey, just checking in. Instead, say, how's it going with X, Y, or Z thing that we talked about? It's a simple tweak, but it makes all the difference in how you follow up. And she's like, Justine, the minute you said that, I was like, I hate saying just checking in, but I have no other way of following up with people. I didn't know what else to say until you taught me. And at that moment, I realized, oh, she can help me, because there's a lot of things that I feel that way about that I don't know how to fix. And if you could help me with that, you could probably help me with other things. And that's the key, is you need to show up and give them something that they're going to go, I needed that today. Instead of me doing that video and saying, and so if you want 15 other reframes, then click on my link in bio and purchase my thing. I just showed up and trusted that when someone watches this, they're going to have that exact realization that this woman had, and they're going to go to my bio. They're going to learn about my offers. And so many times we spend so much of our energy thinking, how do we get this to convert? And another great example is a client of mine was selling marketing services, and she was sharing this post about how she was working out at the gym and tying it to her offer. And I said to her, when you share personal stories, just let it be personal. Just like share the thing about working out. You don't have to tie everything to your business or your offer or whatever. That can just exist and people can just get to know you. They can be like, I also work out. I also value nutrition and health and wellness and all of the things. And you just let that be what it is. And then you post something else that's businessy, right? And so sometimes we can get in this sort of belief that if this is a business profile, then everything needs to be business related and every post needs to be selling something. And our calls to action can be as simple as, let me know if you have any questions about this. DM me if you want to explore different ways to do this for your business, or book a call if you want to chat about this. No strings attached, right? Like it doesn't have to be a click the link in bio, purchase the thing. And in fact, it's probably better when it's not that.
I think that's one of those other things that people really went overboard with, was tying everything to business, like personal things to business. I don't know if these are real or if these are a joke. I remember seeing memes or posts online about someone posting a selfie at a funeral or something like that. And like, oh, my dad just died today. Here's what the death of my father taught me about business. Or just finalized my divorce today. Here's what my divorce told me about marketing and sales. And it's just,
We can read right through it. It's so
Yeah.
transparent.
Yeah, well, and it's these things that you shouldn't be really sharing online publicly to everybody else who doesn't know you anyways. In my mind, there's some things that remain personal that you maybe share with friends and family, people who actually know you in real life. The death of somebody in your family is probably not one of those things that you share publicly to everybody.
Well, and maybe it is, but Amy Porterfield talks about this really cool concept of scabs and scars. Have you heard this?
Oh, no.
Okay. So a scab, if you pick at it, it bleeds. A scar, you can pick at it incessantly and it won't do anything. And I think a lot of people post things when they're scabs. They're like too soon to share. But if you were like, my grandfather ran a business for 42 years and he died in 2019 and now it's 2025. And like, here's what I learned from that. It's like, you have enough time and processing to have the perspective that it actually feels maybe like a genuine post versus like, I'm at his funeral today and I just had all these realizations about business. Like, no, you did not. Like let yourself grieve. In that moment, it's a scab, right? It's still fresh and new. And so
Why are you thinking about business?
yeah, exactly. And the truth is you're not. It was all those very disingenuous, like crying posts that a lot of people are getting flack for. Like that one CEO who fired employees and he went on LinkedIn and he got so much flack for it. He was like crying. Yes. And everybody was beating him up because he's like, I had to fire people today and it was so hard. And like, here's what's going on. And it's like, when you're in a true moment of genuine grief, you're not taking out your phone to capture the moment. And we see through that so fast. And so if you're sharing something, it can't be the real raw, like I'm at the funeral and tears are streaming down my face and I'm writing you this post about my business. It's like, if you're processing that, and maybe you have thoughts, like I have thoughts all the time about business in situations that are not related to business, but I'm not in that moment thinking, how do I post this? And I think that's part of the problem with the immediate culture that we live in and like that instant gratification culture is I can't enjoy my vacation. I have to take the perfect photos to capture what Bali looks like at sunset so I can share it to my Instagram followers. Versus like the other day, I was at a birthday party and someone said, can everyone upload their photos to the photo album from the party? And I responded, so sorry, I didn't even take my phone out once. I was enjoying myself at the party and like having good connections and conversations. And other people were uploading hundreds of photos. We were there for 3 hours. Like, what are you doing? But that's the culture that we live in where every moment has to be used or captured or tweaked to fit something. And I think this is like the overall message behind every piece of content you share is it really coming from a place of true authenticity and experience, and from a place of like, this is really how I feel. This is genuinely in this moment what I'm wanting to share, versus this is what I feel I should be sharing. This is what I feel I need to be capturing. This is what I feel people want from me or expect of my brand, versus like, this is from the heart. This means something. And that's why a lot of content doesn't stand out too, is because we're trying to fit some mold versus just being who we are as people. I think we're missing that a lot of the time.
So we've got top of funnel, we got middle of funnel. What are we doing to keep steady sales coming in? Because like we mentioned kind of at the beginning, we go through these cycles of, okay, we filled the call calendar. Now we're taking all these calls. But when we take all the calls, now we're not filling the calendar for the next week. And then we have a down week or a down month even. So how do we avoid that? Like, what can we do to help mitigate that type of feast and famine in the business?
Well, the calendar's always open, first of all. You want people to be booking appointments a little bit further out, right? People who are a little less ready. And so the messaging is a little bit different for those people. Those are more the consideration people than the decision-making people. So you want to have different reasonings for calls. Like, you're saying different messages to each person. To the person who, and I teach a framework called the RAIN framework, and there's 3 fundamental parts of it. The first part is relatable content. That's for the person who's ready to buy today. Just to your point earlier, we want someone who's been through exactly what we're going through. They know exactly how to help us. Their story immediately resonated. We know we have a problem. We're very problem aware. We're very proactive. We're looking for that solution. We book that call. We're ready to go today. Those are going to be a pretty small pool of your audience. Then you have the E, which is educational content. That's actually the majority of your content. Now, education doesn't mean like, here's how you build a funnel or whatever. It doesn't have to be that type of education, but the goal is to shift people's perspectives, to talk about things in a different way. So for me, an example of great educational content is when I show up and say, you're actually bad at sales, but that's not a bad thing. You just haven't had the experience and the perspective and enough practice to get good at it yet. So instead of thinking, how do I get better at sales, and listening to more podcasts and reading all the books and consuming all of the content, why don't you just go sell more stuff? And then you'll figure out, how do I get good at it? In fact, you won't even be thinking about how to get good at it. You just will be better at it because you'll be doing it more, right? And so that's a piece of educational content that doesn't feel like I'm telling you what to do or saying something in the same way as everyone else. In fact, a lot of other sales coaches will say, you're not bad at sales, you're good at sales, but you just don't see this way or that way. And I'm like, actually, you are bad at sales, but that's okay. And so finding what your unique edge is in that way so that you can stand out and educate people on something that they might have heard. To your point, I've heard this 15 times, but I never heard it said that way. Sometimes the way you say it lands differently and creates all the change. And then the last category is inspirational content. So that's going to inspire the people who are just starting to learn about what it is that you do. So if you're a life coach, they might not actively be trying to improve their relationship, but they know something feels a little off. And so now you're just starting to create some of that awareness. Like, maybe you've had this thought today. Maybe you had this conversation recently. Maybe this is something that you're excited about. And those people start to become curious. And that's what you want to do, is spark curiosity. But all of this content is going out in 1 week. You've got inspirational content going out. You've got educational content going out. You've got relatable content going out. And it depends on where you're at in your sales cycle. If you're fully booked on calls, you probably want to dial back the relatable content for the ready buyer and speak more to the inspirational content for the top of funnel person. Or if you're like kind of in the middle of the road, you probably want to beef up your educational content and move people to the relatable and kind of tweak the playbook a little bit. But in reality, all that content is going out all the time. It's just what percentages. Is it 10%, 20%, 30%? And you just have to kind of figure out your ideal percentages.
Yeah. So Justine, I know that we've gone over a lot of things here and people probably feel like they're drinking from a fire hose and they probably want to dive deeper into this. How can people get more information about this, or how can they find you online to get more help with it?
Yeah. So my website is JustineBeauregard.com. It's just my name.com. And if you go to Google and type in my name, all of my links will pop right up there. My LinkedIn, my Instagram, everything else, because, I'm a millennial. So I rank on Google for my own name. But one of the things that I also offer are these monthly speed networking events. And they're a really fun opportunity for you to get in front of dozens of people and practice your pitch, practice selling. So many people don't put themselves out there enough, don't get into new and fresh spaces enough. So I love hosting these because in the format that we use, you get 90 minutes of connection with a lot of people, like 60 to 80 people usually show up live to these events, and half of them are new and half of them are kind of my OGs, I call them, that come back over and over again. And then we go into breakout rooms. So you have genuine, deeper conversations with a smaller group of people, but you get the spreadsheet of everyone's info at the end so that you can go and network and follow up and do all the things with people that you maybe didn't have the chance to connect to more. And these were sort of my solution for just getting out there and networking and wasting a ton of hours going to multiple events and having all these coffee chats. And it got really exhausting for me. So now I just do this one networking event every single month, and I get to meet new people, connect with people on a deeper level, and they're really fun to do.
Nice. Awesome. Well, we will have the links for all of that in the show notes. So if you click on those, you will be able to check those out. Justine, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate having you on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great to be here.
You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. For show notes and information about today's guest, head to digitaltrailblazer.com. Now, if you love this episode, if you got some value, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe. And be sure to share this episode with anyone you know who could use help to build their business. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.